Hi there, I just wanted to finish up the presentation today, and we covered most of the 2D media except for photography. So we're just going to briefly look at three different examples: cyberchrome, video, and then photo montage. And right now you're seeing a lot of digital photography, but there's still analog photography that's black and white or color. And cyberchrome is a type of analog photography that just requires the polyester-based paper rather than another type of photo paper. So, okay, photo montage is is like collage, but you're using photos rather than having the imagery come from a lot of different sources materials. And this was really popular with the Dadaists, and Hannah Hawk was really well known for her collage technique. Lorna Simpson is a well-known contemporary artist for her videos. There are a lot of really good video artists right now that are out there. In fact, one of the photo candidates that we saw last week just showed only video, and it's just really become more and more popular. So we're going to finish up with some of the visual elements and then move into the design principles. And we've talked some about texture and pattern, and I think it's just really important to be able to recognize the different types of textures and how to use the vocabulary in describing what you're seeing in an image. So in this case, you can see that there's a stylization of the horse's mane, but it's not trying to simulate it in a super realistic manner, so abstracted texture would be a better descriptive word to use for the lion's mane. Down here, you can see that the patterns they're decorative. They're also, you're seeing some relief sculpture attached to this capital. You know, and so down here, this would, and even in this little wheel, those would be, again, examples of abstracted texture. And tactile texture as well. Tactile usually applies to three-dimensional works of art more than it does two-dimensional. Sometimes you'll come across a two-dimensional artist who uses the paint really thick or is doing collage, and then tactile texture is a good descriptive word, but mostly you'll see it applied to three-dimensional art. Patterns are another type of texture. Anytime you have repetition, you're going to have texture. Quilts are famous for their patterns, and Faith Ringgold used the quilt as a structure for her imagery. It was like her canvas, and they're decorative, but at the same time there's a narrative, and the quilt also kind of influences the way that she's dealing with the space in that flat fabric cloth. So that's interesting. Patterns in architecture. We post and lintel systems. You will see patterns developing, and we'll look at some examples later on. Shape and volume. So anytime you enclose an area, you're going to have shapes, and the character of those shapes, like lines, can change, and you'll have shapes different sizes. You'll have shapes that are organic or biomorphic, means the same thing. Geometric, meaning that they've been drawn with some kind of device, some kind of tool, a protractor, a compass, a ruler. Curvilinear are curves with straight lines. Rectilinear are angles with straight lines. Volume is when we are containing space. That's what volume means. And so the structure of that object will determine whether that volume is regular or irregular, geometric, or biomorphic. costumes or high fashion, any kind of piece of clothing that might be on display as an artifact or as an example of a fashion designer's level of skill and their style, and maybe it's a season, their portfolio is being represented by a collection of clothing pieces that they've made for another designer. Like I'm thinking of the House of Chanel, and there was a designer whose name just escapes me that created clothing, created fashion designs for the House of Chanel. You guys probably know who it is, those of you in fashion merchandising. So space. Space is when we're able to depict the illusion of space, and it can be deep or it can be shallow and it can be flat. And space can be occupied by colors, by lines, by different mediums, media, and different, with collage, the space might be defined by the interaction of those collage pieces. Sometimes there's technical devices that help to create spatial illusions. So when we look at isometric perspective, we're looking at these 30-degree angles, and you can see what's in the front is also parallel with what's in the back. You don't have this receding in, where the two edges of the box are receding to a point like we do with linear perspective. So, and with orthogonal perspective, that front plane is flush, but the sides are at a 40-degree angle from that front plane, that bottom edge. Linear perspective requires a horizon line, which is your eye level. It requires vanishing points, and it just depends on your perspective to the object. And so those are the two main things that you have to remember: is where is your horizon line, and where is that object in relationship to your horizon line, and where do you imagine those vanishing points existing? They might be out of your peripheral vision, but you can kind of pretend that they might be somewhere that's a little more tangible when you're drawing the orthogonal lines. And the orthogonal lines are these dotted lines. Okay, so here we have 1-point perspective. The front plane is flush with us, it's parallel with the viewer. 2-point perspective, you're looking at the corner edge, and then the two side planes go off towards the vanishing points. 3-point perspective, another way of seeing that or thinking about it is bird's eye view or frog eye view. And so that third point, that third vanishing point, will be above or below the horizon line. Okay. To move into three-dimensional art, we have new media like 3D printing. We have freestanding or in the round. That means you can walk all the way around it. Relief sculpture. The images come off of a base like an architectural wall, and then we have site-specific. And kinetic. Kinetic just means it's movable. Site-specific means it's made on site and particularly for that site. So relief sculpture, there's high relief, low relief. High relief is a sculpture that comes from the base, at least 50% or more of it, of that subject is seen. Low relief, just think of a coin. There's just a little bit of that image being raised from the back surface. So site-specific. Serra created these sculptural forms using large sheets of steel, and he was really trying to force the viewer to think about how they would negotiate space and how it blocks your view too from certain spaces in the room. Kinetic, Alexander Calder, you looked at some of his wire pieces that he did for a carnival piece he made. These are movable, that's kinetic, and they're shown all over in major museums in the world. Again, relief, high relief sculpture. Carving is a subtractive process. You can carve away with your fingers, you can carve away with certain chisels and sharp-edged carving tools. It just depends on the materials that you're using. Modeling is when you're working with the material in your hands, pushing, pulling, pressing, and additive, you might be adding more clay to what you have in order to help build up the form and get the shapes that you desire. So clay is often thought of as a medium that's used to create functional pieces in ceramics largely. Clay is also used, though, to create models of subjects that will later be cast in bronze. And that's the case here. So, assemblages. Joseph Cornell was really well known for collecting found objects and creating assemblages, and he really inspired a lot of artists, one of them being Robert Rauschenberg and Rauschenberg's Combines. Up here we see a piece, Nimba, Goddess of Fertility, that probably used for ritual purposes, and includes shells, the raffia, and wood. Okay. Here's Rauschenberg's Combine. Rauschenberg would go walk around his block in New York City, and if he found other people's junk that they had set out on the sidewalk or nearby dumpsters, he would just bring it home with him, and he became really well known for these. 3D printers to create forms that can be repeated to create these sculptural forms. So this is a little out of place, but oblique perspective. So here we have, the front wall is parallel with us, with the picture plane, but you can see the 45-degree angle on the side wall. Okay, so that's oblique. Installations, when we think about space and three-dimensional objects, installations is when artists will take several different media, not just sculpture, but they will take a space and transform it into a work of art. And that work of art might have paintings and sculpture. It's definitely a combination of different media. It's not just only one thing necessarily. In this case, we are looking at just one type of artwork, the glass that Chihuly's famous for. But here we have, St. Teresa, Ecstasy of St. Teresa in the Cornaro Chapel in Italy. And this is combining painting with sculpture in this architectural framework. This is a beautiful piece. If you ever get to Italy, you should make time to see this. It is a religious experience unto itself. Okay. This artist is famous for creating these like firework sculptures or in performance pieces. Performance piece is an even better word. And so you have this element of time and motion, which is one of the design principles. And these are some of the other design principles that we have. So balance, symmetrical, mirroring each side, asymmetrical. It's, small versus big. Radial, in the round, equal weight, 360 degrees. Rhythm, repetition creates rhythm. Scale and proportion. Proportion are the parts as they relate to the whole. Scale is the entirety. Emphasis, the focal point. Unity and variety.